Hi everyone, I'm Scott Schneider. This is Stereo Niche. Hey, this week we're going to take another look at audio ads, and this time it's from the year 1978. All right, well, thanks for sticking around because I think you might enjoy this one. A lot of folks seem to enjoy the 1960s review of those ads, and so I thought I would pick 1978 and go through those. I think 1978 was an interesting year. It was a bit of a peak, I think, in many areas. The largest receivers were being made. The cassettes cassette decks are coming in as a big format, and lots and lots of speaker manufacturers were hitting the market. So it seemed to be a bit of a peak, in the music audio gear era. So that's why I chose it. Instead of going all the way to 1980, I thought I would do 1978. I did it similarly in dividing it up into sections like turntables and amplification and gear, cassette decks and reel-to-reels. So you'll see that, and each area is broken out. At the end, in 1960, the only advertisers were related to audio for the most part. But by 1978, other manufacturers and other segments realized that's a demographic that they want to reach out to. So a lot of other advertising, non-audio related types of advertising was going on, and so I thought I'd point that out as well. Before you get to the video, I will make you aware of a mistake I was making. I kept confusing my right and left, so oftentimes referring to taking a look at the right hand of the screen when it's really the left. So apologies for that in advance. I just didn't have time to go back and make all those corrections. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. See you soon. Well, let's kick off 1978 with probably the most recognized monster receiver ever, and that's the Pioneer SX 1980. I think this represents probably the pinnacle of monster receivers and hi-fi. To me, 1978 is when everything, the world's aligned and everyone was coming out with lots of cool gear. You'll see, tons of stuff in this section, but the Pioneer SX 1980, while maybe not the most powerful monster receiver, it just gets a lot of recognition. Pioneer was hitting on all cylinders. They were the most aggressive and prolific advertiser in this year, comparatively speaking, when I look at across the landscape at other manufacturers. So that one seems to be the most appropriate to start us off. Now here on the left, I thought it would deserve to get in here, at least in the second slot, is the most powerful receiver ever made, and that's the SA1000 from Technics at 330 watts a channel. And they're saying a few receivers give you 0.03 total harmonic distortion, but only Technics gives it to you with 330 watts. Pretty much a beast. On the right, this is another Technics advertisement as well, showcasing some of their separates, an integrated and a tuner, it looks like. Moving on, here's just the manufacturers just keep rolling. There's going to be so many you're going to see here, but on the left, a name I think many of us know, Phase Linear, and it looks like they're showing off one of their, or several of their amps of the day. Quite powerful beasts there. In the middle, the Sound Craftsman 250 watt amplifier. I've not run across one of these before. I'm familiar with them, but I've never actually run across one. But they do have some impressive looking meters. On the right side from Hitachi, they're Hitachi's Class G, and trying to showcase what is starting to seems to come into play this year, and that's the blackface gear. You'll see several manufacturers that's starting to show that, even though we're still in the middle of what we call the silverface era. But this is from Hitachi, and it's showing off some of the internals there, along with the cool meters they've got on the front front faceplate there. Looking on, we've got Onkyo with their quartz locked receivers they're trying to highlight. In the middle, it's Yamaha's receivers. A little bit subdued for Yamaha, I think. There's some other, some separates and things that they have advertising, but for their receivers anyway, it was a little bit laid back. On the right side's a name I'm not too familiar with, Sankyo. Not really sure. I've heard of it, and I think I may have seen a piece or two here or there, but don't think they were too popular. On the left, here's Kenwood. One good thing leads to another. That's the KR9600 that they are showcasing there. Pretty cool. They set themselves apart with incorporating those rack handles, you know, makes them look a little more rugged. In the middle, here's Radio Shack showcasing their STA78, trying to make it look sophisticated, I guess, with the violinist there in the background. And on the right, Luxman. Luxman is their R1050 amplifier tuner, or tuner amplifier. I think we call it a receiver, huh? They're trying to showcase it as separates in a box, I guess. Now, as I mentioned, Pioneer, by far the most dominant advertiser at this year that I could find. And just like Fisher was in the last one I did of the 1960, Fisher was the dominant manufacturer that was advertising of that year. And that's the case for 1978. Pioneer dominated. Lots of two-page ads showcasing their gear and really, you know, sort of, you know, confirming they're the powerhouse. They're the big dog this year, and they have lots of great products. On the left, here's the Distinction Series from Crown. Their EQs and their amplifier there, 221 watts per channel. That's quite specific. Right next to that is some SAE parametric EQs. I've got a couple of these, and I've got some of the Crown examples as well, but really cool stuff. They were making some top-end gear here at this time. On the right side, it's Fisher. So I talked about Fisher. They were very dominant in the tube era, and they're still a player. They're still putting out product here. This is their RS1058. And here's Marantz. Ultimately, it's Marantz. Go for it. Kind of an interesting ad. On the right, Seton. Seton was a very cool manufacturer. They had a very interesting design aesthetic. I think it was very clean and very well done. Not sure what they're showcasing in this particular ad, but I don't have any Seton in my collection. I'd love to have a piece or two, but very nice gear. Here's the left, it's Yamaha again. This is their CA2010. I have this amp as well. They're interesting. You could look at that amp and think it was, you know, it's a current amp that it's made today. Their current amps look very similar to this one. In the middle, a name some of you may not know, Nico. I've had a piece or two along the way, not many, but they made some pretty hefty gear. These look pretty substantial here, and they're silver face. I think they have some black face. I'll show you in a few minutes, but really cool gear. I think they were an under the radar brand. On the right, Realistic is back in the picture with the Realistic 2000. Apparently to them it had rave reviews. Back again with the big dog. Oh no, sorry, this is Sansui. I was almost mistaking that for a Pioneer ad. The Sansui 9000, or G9000. Sansui was, you know, I think at their peak, coming out with their biggest products. The G9000 certainly is a highly collectible receiver. The largest of the G series line in that model line. Here on the next side, I'm not sure what happened to the right side of this ad. I lost some of it somewhere, but this is some of the other receivers in that lineup. The G8000, 7000, 6000, 5000, and there's a 4500 as well. But they covered just about every price point and amount of power you may want to get in your receiver. So they had a full range of models. Here on the left, AccuPhase, a preamp designed especially for records. So they were emphasizing the C220 in this one. In the middle, this is the only advertisement I could find for McIntosh, at least through the magazines I was looking at. Doesn't seem to be a prolific advertiser of this time frame. On the right, think if you know B&O, you'll recognize some of this B&O product, the 4400 and their turntable in the background. On the left, it's Luxman again. This is the LRS system, which I think is a tuner. What is that? A reference series tuner. That's it. On the right, Nico here. This is some of their blackface stuff. Looks good. I've always thought they had very good design and just clean, to the point, very purposeful. On the left, Phase Linear. Kind of a interesting, somebody's on acid or something looking at that ad, but it's their Linear 6000. In the middle, it's Phase Linear again, as it says, for higher power. On the right, Onkyo. I like the Onkyo receivers. They had I like the way the tuner dial inset there with the meters was sort of angled. I think that was kind of distinctive. Phase Linear one more time, showing off their amps, this time in some nice wood cases. In the middle, we've got SAE, showcasing some of their in the black too. I guess this is a second version of that. On the right is Uptonica. Uptonica wasn't around too long, but they made some interesting product, and it's a pretty good quality. I've had a couple of pieces here and there over the years, and very much, thought it was high quality. It had a good feel to it. Mitsubishi. Some may forget Mitsubishi was really trying to break into the market. This is their separates, the amp and preamp, meant to be sort of pushed together and look like a very large unit, but they could be they were separate pieces, as it shows there in the picture. On the left, Sony's receivers of this time frame. They always tell the Sony from this era they have the tuner sort of mid-mounted, and then the meters up above. So it takes a few minutes for me to go back and get used to it again. But I have the V7. It's a pretty distinctive looking unit and very well made. Sony made some good products. Here's the professional, or I think they were trying to market them as the professional line from Technics. I've had these before. These were all sort of a thin rack mount units, all the same size, and they were sort of, I think, meant to sort of appeal to that pro category, even though they were still consumer models. Got Hitachi here. They're introducing the world's most powerful 50-watt receiver. It's a nice looking ad. I like that reflection. We got Sony again. This looks like one of the biggest receivers here. On the right, Nakamichi. This is a cassette deck, it looks like, and it's this one that sits, it's at an angle. It's like a wedge. It's kind of a unique shape to it. Sits on a table but angled up at you. On the left, it's JVC. This was an interesting line. Very distinctive, very much their own design aesthetic. Set itself apart, surely. If you saw that anywhere, you knew it was JVC. I have another picture coming up that shows several of them stacked, but that's quite an interesting line with the built-in EQs. In the middle there, that's Philips. Philips was also making some sort of basic and standard looking, but very, very good, well-built gear. It looks something very much like a Kenwood or an Onkyo maybe. On the right, you may not know this brand, Spectro Acoustics. I did a review actually just a couple of months ago of I have a Spectro Acoustics amplifier. And they were short-lived, but sort of a meteor. They sort of came out of nowhere and then burned brightly for a while, and then they just went away. But interesting story for them. Here we are, Mitsubishi again. These are the separates, but this time it's the integrated without the meters, and on the bottom, I think that's the tuner down there. Kind of cool looking units. That middle unit always reminds me of, there's a Pioneer solid state amp that looks similar, different size I think, but they look similar, so I have to look closely to make sure I know which one it is. On the left, look at that monolith. That is from Nakamichi. It's a different and probably the most unique rack system that you'll see. Rack mount, but in its own Nakamichi sort of way. Very, very cool setup. On the right, it's Lafayette, the LR120DB. that sort of cartoonish advertising I've noticed was very 70s-ish. Now this is interesting. I had never seen this before, and I don't think I've seen any of this these kind of setups. But this is what JVC called this the music tower, and these were systems with its own sort of furniture, not what we might call a cabinet, rack system, not that traditional sort of stuff we see, but its own rolling cabinet with its top-mounted. It looks something like professional recording gear in a way, but I've never run across these units before. This is the only time I've ever seen it. On the left, Nico again, this time with their silver face gear instead of the black face stuff. Again, it's impressive to me. In this picture anyway, it looks a bit like Luxman. In the middle, we have some Sound Craftsman here. I see a lot of the Sound Craftsman EQs. They seem to have been very popular. On the right, Reebok's. Reebok's made some great gear. Don't run across it often, but their stuff was very similar. It looked very similar. It was kind of like McIntosh in a way. That the design style stayed there for a very long time. They didn't make sweeping changes, to the design. They just made very solid gear. JVC, this is that picture I was mentioning, showing their several different models. And I don't think it's this particular line, but it's around this time frame. I have a receiver from them. It's a monster. It's just humongous. But again, it's that very distinctive JVC look. Only JVC offers a built-in graphic EQ for more flexible control of the entire audio spectrum. Now we have Sansui describing their rack system, although it's a program by Sansui and designed to send every audio file into orbit. So while it may have been a rack system, it was a pretty high quality system. Not to be confused with the rack, what we call rack systems that were probably mid-80s. They were much less expensive. Now on the left here, we got some Kenwoods. Not sure why it's the 1980 Kenwood here, but they thinking they're getting ahead of the game, I guess. On the right, Luxman showing off their integrated amp. It looks like their receiver on the other side there. So Luxman also had its own style phases. They've made some adjustments along the way, but they always had a kind of a distinctive look that I thought was very classy. Phase Linear. Phase Linear may have the record for the number of advertisements. They were, very prolific, but they had small advertisements, whereas Pioneer had large 2-page. They were typically like quarter-page ads that I could see. On the right here, AccuPhase, Win It All, the AccuPhase Super System, an audio perfectionist fantasy. Yeah, I'd say so. Some very nice looking Infinities in there, some DBX gear. It's quite an interesting turntable there. So yeah, there's a lot going on. The Quadraflex. I'm familiar with Quadraflex. However, I can't recall actually running across any of it. So it doesn't seem like it was the most popular brand out there, but it looks impressive. But I've never owned any. If anybody has owned some, love to hear your comments about it. On the right, Optonica. Optonica showing off an integrated amp and a tuner. Again, it's very nice gear. On the left, Radio Shack. They're showing off their System 7. So it's a thin profile receiver paired with Minimus 7 speakers. Quite cool speakers that have been around. This is about the time those Minimus 7s came out. I think they came out in 77 maybe, somewhere around that time frame. So they had not been out too long. And then they matched them up with a thin profile receiver to have, I guess, what we would call one of the first mini systems. On the right side, it looks like very similar to the Nakamichi system, but this is SAE. There's a lot of followers for SAE. They made some very good gear, and I've seen quite a few collectors for their models. So very cool company. They made some pretty interesting gear. That's a pretty impressive rack system right there. On the right, it's the Yamaha system. I have some of these units myself, and kind of unique. I've always thought, that most manufacturers made a sweeping shift from silver face into the black face gear, but Not so. Yamaha was making their Silverface products at the same time as these products, so they had a major shift and were moving into black cases and front faceplates for gear as early as 78. Oh yeah, this is a 670 by Harman Kardon. I haven't had a 670. I think I've had a 330 and some others, a 730, but I don't think I've had this particular model. But very popular line, and I think it's got kind of a cool design. I liked the little touch buttons on the thin part in the middle there, and where they lit up. It was I think I like that type of button. Now Sansui on the left here, showcasing one of their big receivers of the day, but also on the right. And that's that contrast I was talking about. So receivers were Silverface still, but the separates were coming in with black cases. And I have this particular unit myself as well. But to me, that white on black, black with white lettering very much stands out, and it's very easy to read. So I really like that look of that gear. Well, let's talk about some turntables and other peripherals. I started off with this JVC ad because I thought it looked pretty cool. I didn't realize they made so many turntables in this time frame. I have a JVC, and it's a very, very nice unit. These look in the picture, they look very Denon-ish, don't they? Especially the ones on the far right. But at a distance, I would have said that was a Denon. So interesting, I've not run across that many of these Denons though, and I kind of wonder, did they just not last and were sadly put into the dustbin, or what happened? But I personally just haven't run across that many of their models. Moving on, we got Quanta. Quanta I've seen a few times. I don't think it was really a higher end turntable. In the middle there, it's Dual. I think lots of us know Dual. And on the right, it's Shure. They have their cartridges, and they perform like, let's see, fact, off-the-shelf Shure cartridges perform like Shure Critic samples. All right, they said it. On the left, Microsecchi, they make really good turntables. I have one of them, and it's not that really cool exotic looking one at the top there, but I do have one. Every Microsecchi I've ever seen looks like it's very well built. They seem like some well designed, well engineered, with good products turntables. I don't think they've turned out any dogs really. The middle here, Denon, quite popular. Denon must have sold a ton. I've run across quite a number of Denons over the years, and I have a very nice one myself. But they seem to have made very good gear, and quite impressive. On the right, this little Bang & Olufsen, this little B&O model. I can't remember what the model is, but I like the larger ones. The 402 and 404 with the linear arm are very nice. The only bad thing about B&O that I don't like is they have a unique cartridge, and it only works with them. So that's a bit of a pain. On the left here, if you want to get the best music playback, well, you better use Stanton 881. So kind of a confusing ad until you read it, I guess, but that was, I think, the point. In the middle here, Denon is promoting their moving coil cartridges. Got quite a few models, and a lot of Denon. The 103, I think. Very nice cartridge, very well regarded. On the right, here's Shure marketing their cartridges as well, trying to explain why it's superior. Now left side here, Audifon. I like this ad, kind of a unique ad. They've got their own cartridge line. I've heard good things about them. I haven't really spent much time with an Audifon though. In the middle, Audio-Technica, very prolific manufacturer of cartridges. I have quite a number of them. It looked like they were the, I don't know if we would call them bargain. I'm sure they had really nice higher end models, but it seems like 50% of the turntables I ever obtained seem to have one of their cartridges. And on the right here, it's Empire. I guess they're showcasing their entire catalog in this, but I have some Empire cartridges. On the right, Sonus. For every system worth more than $500, you should get a Sonus and put on it. In the middle there, another Ortofon advertisement. What is that? Play as it lays. The source of perfection in stereo sound. Pickering's new XSV 3000. Well, that's impressive looking, huh? All right, on the right, Radio Shacks, they're not going to be left out of the game. They're making some turntables here. Want to get in your living room, play some records. Got a Kenwood, only one direct drive semi-automatic, has a concrete advantage. Oh, so this is their Kencrete model, where it was a very dense concrete-like material. I always thought that they were all sort of an off-white. I didn't realize they had a dark concrete model. Let's see, on the left we have a new Fisher linear motor turntable. So Fisher was in the game. Another dual model here, the 604. This one is a direct drive, not like those idlers that I think we're mostly familiar with. Here's the Pioneer. Pioneer's two-page ad, the PL518. I've seen some of these, a lot of these actually, where you can take off the tone arm section there, and then take it apart, and then cover it in veneer, wood veneer, and it's very cool. They look very nice. If you go through that effort and do that, they can come out to be a completely different looking model and look very cool. On the left, probably the most prolific turntable manufacturer, Technics. They made I think about 100 different models. They made more than probably most. On the right, the AccuTrack Plus 6, the only programmable turntable. I can remember this being demoed on some daytime or morning talk show back in the 70s. I guess obviously 78 or maybe 77. But I remember this on a talk show and them, playing a record, pushing the button, and then the needle going over to that exact song. Way ahead of its time. I guess that's not much of a remote there if you got to shoot it directly into the R2-D2 looking receiver there. But anyway, quite cool. I've come across these a number of times. On the left, we got the Sony turntable. They're putting out some good product as well. I found their turntables to be a little basic. I haven't run across them that often. In the middle, there's the Garrard, one of their better models, I think. And on the right, they're very classic and classy Empire 698. Very cool. To me, it looks like it's right out of the 50s, although I think it came out in 60. This not the same exact model, but very similar line, like the Troubadour. So it seems to me they just have that distinctive estate look to them. On with Technics, they've got their models they're highlighting here, direct drive. And, they know what they were doing. They built enough of them. Sony again with their PSX7 model. On the left, can't make this baby shake. It's made of rock. The turntable from Kenwood. On the right, more Denon models. Kind of some boring advertising there. It looks like they're just sitting inside a big box or something. Not sure what's going on with that. Well, let's kick off this section. Probably the most popular format in this era, outside the record still, is the dominant, but gaining in popularity is the cassette. And it very much took off just because it was the first time you could make a playlist and you could take that over to your buddy's house, pop it in their cassette deck, and let them hear some new songs, let them hear some songs you put together. It was just an interesting time of sharing music. And the cassette, while it had been a slightly inferior format as far as playback reproduction, I'm sure that's arguable. I've heard plenty of great cassettes myself, but what a time for it. And I think the cassette decks were moving up to that better playback quality. And so lots of manufacturers were just putting out some very cool cassette decks. So here on the left, we've got the Tandberg. Tandberg was, I think, mostly known as for reel-to-reels, and then, of course, why not make some cassettes? On the middle here, we've got the Kenwood. All three-head cassette decks let you hear as you record. Ours let you record precisely what you hear. So that's Kenwood putting their stamp on the cassette market. In the middle here, I mean on the right, Akai. That ad's interesting. Not sure what's going on. Looks like the Garden of Eden there, something, not quite sure. But they got some really good cassette decks based on that ad. Moving on, TIAC. TIAC, very big manufacturer, very well versed in tape media. Most important feature in these decks is based on a timeless idea. In the middle, we got a 3-minute warning from Iowa. They made some interesting cassette decks as well. On the right here, Sony, they're confessing that we couldn't have done this without a 30-year head start, so good for them. On the left, can't have a tape, player without some tape media, so you might want to record some of your own stuff. If you do, use Maxell. On the right, Sony quality that speaks for itself. Now, these were cool, obviously from a very similar or the same art marketing shop or whatever advertising agency, but this red on black on the left from TIAC. It's got that new black magic. On the right, Star Wars. It looks like those reel-to-reels are about to take off. This is like a year after Star Wars came out, I think, so very much on everyone's mind. Here's Marantz. Ultimately, it's Marantz. Go for it. I've got one of these cassette decks. I think it's the 3030 there, maybe 3070. Can't remember, but they're just cool looking. They just have that distinctive Marantz look to them. Here we are, Pioneer. Pioneer's got a cool deck here, and can't leave well enough alone. They got to make it better. So get it, Pioneer. Now this was the biggest ad for cassette decks by far. Pioneer's throwing down the gauntlet. They are putting it out there up against Nakamichi. So if you want a really good deck that competes, get the Pioneer CTF1000. On the left here, Reeboks, as I mentioned earlier, they are primarily a reel-to-reel company. I think that's where they are most well known. On the right here, TIAC, pushing the reel-to-reel, but more of a recording studio. I don't know how popular that was to set up your own studio, but they were advertising that in consumer mags. On the left here, Dual. Who knew Dual made a cassette deck? I didn't know that. That's kind of an interesting looking one there with the kind of a console it's sitting in, not quite sure. On the right, Fisher, got to make a full line of products. Fisher is making some cassette decks as well. Here's JVC. They have lots of turntables, but they also have cassettes. On the left here, Akai. They made some very nice high-end reel-to-reels, and I think they're kind of under the radar for for many people. I've run across more of their reel-to-reels than anything else. I actually went to the Consumer Electronics Show in 1982, and I recall seeing Akai there, and they had some cool stuff, but I just haven't run across much more than their reel-to-reels. So they seem to have sold a lot more of those than anything else. On the right here, Sharp, not a name we've seen so far on the list, but Sharp had this particular computer that plays music. First computer chips coming out, I guess. Microprocessors, I don't know. On the left here, you got to have some tape. If you're going to make cool playlists, you're going to have some good tape to play it on. So TDK is in the market. I have gone through a lot of those in my years of making some tapes. They have a nice explosion here of what's the important components of your cassette deck. It's a precision machine, just like your cassette deck is. Lots more manufacturers on the left here. Maxell, and then we got Ampex. I didn't know Ampex even made cassettes, but Ampex was a premier and reel-to-reel company from the 70s and early 80s. They made the most of the recording gear in recording studios. So they were very, very dominant in that sector. I never knew they made cassettes. Here we are from Scotch. I had quite a few Scotch cassettes as well. There's TDK with a slightly different ad, and Akai is coming out also still promoting their reel-to-reels. Well, here's a section probably most have been waiting for. The speakers. Lots and lots of cool brands during this time frame. So to kick it off, I thought I'd start off with the Altec here. This is one I haven't had a chance to get in my collection, the 15 or the 19. But they're an excellent speaker. The 19 gets a lot of rave reviews, and they're a rather large speaker, but very, just a classic Altec speaker, and would love to have a set someday. On the right here, everybody knows, or not everybody, but lots of fans and fanfare around ADS. They were in their stride. Lots of different models, starting with the very large 910 on the top right there, and then the 810, 710. So they had a full gamut of models, all highly regarded. Lots of love for ADS, and for a good reason. On the left here, ultralinear. I've not run across much in the way of ultralinear. I have run across it, not very often. When I did run across it, I can't say that I was, thinking it was going to be fantastic, but in any case, I'm sure that there are fans for it. In the middle here, it's RTR, also another company, not too familiar. I know them, but I've not owned much of it or any of it. I think I've had one set years ago. I think it needed some work, but in any case, it was a fairly popular line. Synergistics here on the right, I've seen it. Again, just like ultralinear, I just didn't get a sense that it was, higher quality. So I typically would pass on it. Maybe only a couple of times. Haven't run across it a lot, but on occasion. Here on the left, Electro Voice. They're still putting out product. I tend to think of Electro Voice, more 50s, 60s era, but they're still cranking out some interesting, products here. On the right, AR. Except now AR is not the AR we know of from the 1960 era. It's Teledyne Acoustic Research now. So their products changed, a whole new line, and some of the models here were still highly regarded, played well. Some folks don't like the Teledyne era, but I think there are, not all of them, but I think there are some of the speaker models of that time frame that are pretty good. On the left here, Celestion, the Ditton 33. I actually have not owned any of these yet. I have read some decent things about them. According to them, if any of these fine speakers listed above sound better to you than the Ditton 33, you better buy it. So they're comparing it to the ADS 710, the AR12, lots of speakers of the day. On the top middle there, Allison. I missed some good Allisons. Years ago, I ran across ironically, a horde of speakers in this empty house, it wasn't empty, it had a bunch of speakers in it. But I kind of talked to them for about 4 or 5 years and still didn't get a chance to even go look at anything. But anyway, Allison's, a lot of fans for the Allison gear, a lot of their speakers. I've read great things, would love to have owned a set or will own a set at some point. Another advertisement for them on the far right, showcasing their vertical models. I guess they had quite a few. The Allison 1 I'm a little more familiar with than some of the others. In the middle here, still going to the left, the AAL, one of the speakers that I've seen on a fair good amount of occasions, but not one I was raving about. In the middle here, the Celestion UL6, also from Celestion. All fine speaker systems. Again, competing now, this is a smaller one, but the ADS 700, the BO 45, JBL L40. So, they were trying to go head to head with those other manufacturers. Moving on, it's Magnepan. No one is, Magnepan is sort of by itself, I think. They're very unique, these planars. I would never advise anyone to restore them. Not fun. I did a set of MG2s years ago, and that's the only set I'll ever do. But a cool speaker nonetheless. They've got a unique sort of sound to them, and very, very cool. In the middle here, Scott, still around, not from their self from the tube era, but they're still cranking out some good product here. They've changed the logo a little bit now to make it look more just like Scott and not H.H. Scott. On the right, Bose. Bose, you may love them or you may hate them. This is the 501. This is a model a college buddy of mine had a set of these when we were in college, and man, I can remember those rocking the room back then. On the left here, Bic Venturi. Can't say I've been a fan of Bic before ever, but I've seen a lot of their speakers over the years. Here's one in the middle. Didn't know this brand, Videoton. Now, I think I've read about them, a few times, but just not one I've ever actually run across. So if you have a familiarity with them, let me know. On the right, Acoustiphase. I've also run across some of their products over the years. Can't say I recall them, so very well. So that must mean something. On the left, Sounds of Sinus. I don't know. That's maybe it was supposed to mean something else. It says a Swedish company, so maybe it was Sinus. I'm not sure, but probably for that spelling reason there, it probably didn't get rave reviews if they sound like sinus. I don't know. I've never seen any models from this company. Koss. I've got a set of Koss. I need to get them out a little more often, but Koss was quite popular during this time frame. They had some very nice models. On the left, Kenwood. I always think of Kenwood just like Pioneer, mostly. I tend to think of them more about their gear, but they still were coming out with lots of speakers. On the right, Ohm. I was just commenting on Ohm this week. I've run across Ohm quite a number of times. Lots of fans for Ohm. They're a great company. Sadly, I think their owner passed away, fairly recently. But Ohm has a unique product line. They have some standard products here. You can see some, the monkey coffin type stuff. But the Ohm Wash was a very unique speaker. I've run across them. I've never bought them because they always need to be restored, and you need some special tooling that only they can do at the factory. And so, for that reason, I've just never bought any, and have actually never listened to any of the real washes, I'll say. Here we are with Dahlquist DQ10. Probably one of the better known, I say, audiophile type speakers, very well regarded. I have a set of them in very rough condition. They need lots of restoration. They were even modified, so I have a lot of work to do on them. But it's a great speaker. Lots of fans for the Dahlquist DQ10 and other models, but I think the DQ10 is by far the most famous, if you will, most noteworthy. On the right, they're promoting if you need a subwoofer, you're going to need to get the DQ LP1 crossover to go with it. Here we go, JBL. It's their new L50. Perfect, gets even closer according to them. Here we are, one of my faves, of course, the new Advent loudspeaker. This is the bullnose model here on the left. On the right, they had a powered model. You may not have known that, but they did have a powered model. I knew of it, but I've not run across a set of them, but I think they did pretty well with this powered model. Here's Marantz. Go for it. I have a set of these, and that's such a unique cabinet with that hollowed out bottom section. I'm not quite sure I understand why. I have to maybe read the ad to understand a little bit better about what the thought process was there, but I think I was having an issue with one of them. I have to go back and take another look, but kind of unique speaker for sure. I've never seen another model speaker kind of like this, who I guess they built in these risers instead of needing speaker stands. But anyway, that was the product from Marantz in '78. On to Design Acoustics. DA had quite a number of cool speakers, I think from the early 80s though. I'm not familiar with these particular models, but Design Acoustics had some cool speakers, just not familiar with this particular models. Here we are with the Technics, the linear phase models. Here's the SB4500A. I've seen them, I've read a lot about them, have never owned any of these. So at some point I'll get a set. The ones I have run across in the past were in pretty rough shape. So for some reason people kind of really love to move them around or something. But anyway, a cool line from Technics. Here we have the Tannoy. Tannoy's looking like, you know, they're all in about the classic mode here, but these should not be your first speakers, but they'll probably be your last speakers, I guess. But Tannoy, always a solid manufacturer, made some great speakers. Here on the right, Jensen. Jensen, very much still in the game. Jensen was popular in the 50s, kind of probably went less popular in the 60s, but they were still jamming in the 70s as well. Here's Bose, the 901. Series 3, I can't remember, I think it's the 2 and 3, have foam surrounds, and they are no fun to refoam. I have 2 dang sets back there I need to refoam, and just not looking forward to it. But anyway, that's the 901. On the right side here, Videoton again, and again, I'm not familiar with them, but you know, if you know anything about them, put some comments. I'd like to know what your thoughts were and your experience. Here we are on the right, RTR, cranking out some different models. The Dynamic Dome. Celestion again with the Ditton 33, it's a different ad. And Koss, they've got their 1010 speaker system here. And the Allison, here's the Allison 3 getting some attention. Now, JBL, they've come back. They've got the L110 here. Can't quite understand this ad, it's rather dark. I think they seem to be showcasing the tops of the speakers versus the speakers, but I don't know. All right, let's see here. Looks like I brought back Sinus here, but Dynaco. Dynaco's got their models here. Their Perfect Becomes Perfection. And then another different ad from Electro Voice. Now Infinity. Look at that. That's just a lot of great looking veneer, isn't it? You know, I've seen these speakers before, or at least I should say I've seen the Quantum Reference standard model before, but I don't think I've seen them set up in this configuration. I think I've seen them quite separate, but because I'm pretty sure that's 2 separate units there, but it looks like one large unit that would be pretty impossible to move around. But anyway, Infinity was cranking out some really cool speakers at this time frame. On the right, smaller bookshelf model, the QE. Now here's a company that makes just a heck of a great tweeter, ESS. This is the Transar ATD. Never seen it before. Can't imagine there were a lot of them out there, but it's a cool looking speaker. I'd surely love to run across a set of these at some point. In the middle, Visonic. These are one of the, I don't know, say one of the first, I think there were others, but you know, a SAT sub system. This is their Sub 1 David. They also had some very small SATs that were very popular, but or bookshelves, I'll say. But this was a SAT sub system that was probably pretty good, I think. On the right, here's the Teledyne era again, AR. This time with the 9, and the 9 is a fairly, I'll say, famous line. Haven't had a set. I do have, I'll say a set that I have aligned with the buyer to buy them, and I just haven't had time to work that out and logistically to go get them. But looking forward to it, a one owner set of Model 9s. But they need a little power to get them going, but lots of fans for the Model 9. All right, moving on to the Electro Voice, the Interface D. I've read about these quite a number of times. Lots of people very much like them. I've actually not had a chance to own any though. In the middle here, the ADS L620. I didn't know that the 620 actually had optional stands. I was aware of the larger models, but didn't realize the 620 came in that category. But anyway, that's pretty cool. On the right here, some Wharfdale speakers. The Magnificent Ease. Unusually efficient and exceptionally clean. Not sure about the look of them though. They don't look all that impressive though, just in looks. But you know, Wharfdale made some good speakers. On the right here, RTR. Now RTR, you know, they had some very unusual designs, and I'll say this thing is quite unusual. New shapes of sound from RTR, the rhombus subwoofer and the pyramid satellite. So you got to give them an A for effort. I mean, that is unique. On the right here, pretty classic, Pioneer, 2-page ad, the HPM series. The 40, the 60, the 100, and the 150. Nice family of speakers, lots and lots and lots of fans for all of them really, but the HPM 100 probably the most. I've had them a number of times. Those very silver round tweeters tend to blow very easily, so if you get a set of them, be very careful. But what a thumping rocking speaker it is. So unlike the 1960s ad review I did recently, by this time, by 1978, they're advertising other things in addition to audio, or I should say home audio. So I thought I would take this section and just get into some of the other things that were being advertised. And around this time frame, or in earlier really, but in 78, lots of advertisements for audio. It took a few years, I think, for manufacturers to realize that, hey, you need to have some better tunes in your car. And there were a lot of great companies advertising for the car market. So Pioneer, again, into that market and heavily advertising. This is the first component car stereo worthy of a name. So this is saying Super Systems here, but I think later on, the name I remember is the Super Tuner. And Pioneer was right in the middle of it, putting out, some good car stereo gear. In the middle here, I put this in here because, well, it's not about all car stereo section, but this is a B&O advertisement. And at first, when I saw this, I thought he was holding cassettes, but that's actually a remote, and it's kind of one of the first early remotes. I guess wireless, I'm not sure, but anyway, I looked at it a little closer and realized that was a remote control he had in his hand. On the bottom of that, I've never heard of this company, Ramco. Ramco sounds right. So not familiar, I never saw this before, so if it's a name you're familiar with, put some comments in. On the right side, I think this company was extremely prolific in their advertising. I remember them in the 70s and 80s. Spark-O-Matic. Always seemed to me, the name didn't ring a bell as far as, sounding like high quality, but I remember quite a few of my buddies, had some Spark-O-Matic gear, and I, don't remember having a bad thought about it. On the left, Spark-O-Matic again, with this sort of intimidating fellow, with his sunglasses on, but if you're a traveling man who thinks car speakers should look tough, but act sensitive. Okay. And in the middle, we've got EPI. They jumped into the car audio game. I actually didn't recall that until I saw this ad, but EPI had the LS70. On the right, Spark-O-Matic again, another impressive looking dude there in his Firebird. It's got the Spark-O-Matic sound. Now the traveling man can see great car high fidelity take shape before his eyes. So I guess you got a EQ going on there, a spectrum analyzer. On the right, cars. Cars are starting to get into the audio mags. So Mitsubishi's talking about their engines, in an audio mag. So kind of interesting. On the right, Jensen. Jensen was, in my mind, as a young man, much more prolific in the car audio space. If you had a set of Jensen speakers in the back, you were really cranking it. Now on the left here, I never knew KLH ever made car speakers. The interesting thing I realized when I was kind of putting this together was I didn't see any KLH home audio speakers, but then I ran across this for car speakers. So interesting the way they say this. You've never seen this name on an automotive loudspeaker because there's never been an automotive loudspeaker worthy of this name. So I guess they really moved into the focus being on the car market, but was not a popular brand, at least by the time I became driving age that I remember, which was 1980. Middle here, Koss. They've got, they're still cranking out good headphones. They were actually in 1960 as well. So Koss still cranking them out. This Berwyn Research, I remember them from my time in high school around this time frame, so they were pretty popular. Now on the left, car speakers again. So the first speaker system thoroughly engineered to sound right in a car. And look who it's from, Advent. So Advent had also moved in, along with KLH, ironically, into the car market. In the middle here, it's Pioneer. They're cranking out some boxy looking speakers there. Maybe they're an HPM speaker, I don't know. On the right, Audiovox, another name I saw everywhere when I was around the driving age. They had lots and lots of products. On the left, Sanyo. Sanyo also, I remember most of their stereos. I actually had a Sanyo stereo in my car for a while. And here's ADS in the middle. These look very much like the setup I had. I had some realistic Minimus 7s mounted very similar to these. Little stands, because they had the same shape as this. So the ADS 200C was a offering back then. And on the right, that looks like a pretty cool looking car stereo. I didn't remember Jensen cranking out car stereos, but that's a nice looking one from 1978. On the left, Motorola. Also didn't recall Motorola making gear at that time, but they were in that space, and those speakers actually look pretty impressive. Here's Jensen again, different ad, but promoting one of their receivers. On the right, Mitsubishi. They were trying to get into the home audio market and thought they would also go into the car audio market as well. So they were cranking out some product. Other ads, again, these are ads that are in audio magazines. So Alcohol has moved in, Seagram's here on the right. You've got Lee Jeans, guy and his girl stuck out in the woods on their motorcycle somewhere. And then, not something we think about anymore, at least I don't, cigarettes. But, I saw these ads and I never smoked, but I remember the ads. And Cool and Real and, Cool again looks like, oh no, it's Winston there. So lots of advertisement for cigarettes, an era that we have gladly moved on from. And then we've got cars, lots of car ads here. Toyota was putting out the ads here. You got the little, truck going on here and the little, what is that? It's a little sports car. Can't remember what that is. A Celica here on the right. So, they're doing some heavy advertising in the audio magazines because, who looks at the audio magazines? Well, young men do for the most part. So they're trying to appeal to a demographic there and, get their product out in front of them. Now on to the left side of the equation here. A car Dracula would have been happy to have seen in. So that crushed velvet looks right up his alley. And would have been cool to have a T-shifter, a full-size car with the look of sportiness and a feeling of driver involvement. Well, that driver feel would have been just a shifter, I guess. But, I guess it was a cool advertisement. On the right, it's a German car by Ford, the Ford Fiesta. Short-lived, I believe, even though it was the imported car of the year. Now moving into the Mustang, the Ford Mustang II. Well, wasn't fast, but had cool features, nice leaky T-top, and then some interesting graphics around the side or spoilers, I don't remember anyone saying they got there quickly in a Mustang II. On the right side, we got the Oldsmobile Forenza. You remember those? No, I don't either. Okay. Let's see. But lastly here, it is, I think the cool car of that year, the Mazda RX-7. I can remember as being a young man, every time I was driving around with my parents, I saw one of those. I thought, man, that is just one slick looking car. And, still looks good. You could have had it back then, starting at $63.95 apparently. So that's how much a sports car cost you in 1978. All right, there you have it. Told you, lots and lots of cool stuff that just, screams the peak era of vintage audio. The SX 1980, 1978, that thing was being sold and advertised. What a beast. The SA 1000 from Technics, the 330 watt, monster of them all was in there as well. So it was a big year for 1978. Cassette decks, there was still a lot of improvement to be made over the coming years, but they were quite prolific Pioneer, again, going after Nakamichi, you know, from the cassette, for the cassette market. So a lot of, you know, competition. Turntables, you know, they hadn't probably hit their peak as far as technology, but they were getting close to it. A lot of great gear, a lot of JVC models that I just didn't recall, and haven't run across them, unfortunately. Although I have, you know, a nice example. You know, they were putting out some fantastic models in that time frame. Other manufacturers from the speaker side, probably the most prolific. Lots of manufacturers there. You know, the Dahlquist, the ARs, the Advents, Infinities. You know, just so many different brands that that we know and appreciate today that were hitting their peak back then. Some that I never heard of. Sinus, I can't say I've ever even known that name existed. It was quite a surprise. Probably not a surprise that it didn't succeed with a name like that, but you know, there are those stories that are yet to be discovered. So if anybody knows that one, I'd love to hear it. And then the advertisements that we no longer see, and it's a good thing. We no longer see cigarettes anymore. I can't say that you know, that was a good thing then, but it was something I recall seeing. Car audio, you know, obviously started before that, but lots of advertising, lots of manufacturers too, from the home audio market into the car market. Some of them I didn't even recall. KLH, I never knew they were in car audio. EPI either. So kind of a surprise for me too, and fun to go revisit. Lots of stuff going on here. I'll get back to doing some reviews of some of the collection and share those with you soon. Other things are going on too, very busy. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you don't want to miss the next one, make sure you hit subscribe, hit that thumbs up as well. As always, you know, thank you guys for tuning in.